Variables. Variables are stored values that you can use to store things such as strings, numbers, objects, and bool values. The words true and false are bool values and are useful for comparisons. You can define local variables, variables that only one script can use, by typing local, then the variable name, =, and then put your value. If you leave off the =, and value, you defined an empty variable. Empty variables are defined as nil. Nil is meant to say that it doesn't have a real value. You can also declare your variable as nil if you want to free it up to hold something else. Not necessary, but an option. After you define the first use of that variable with local in front of it, you can change the variable later on without putting local in front of the variable. Let's talk about some of the different values that can be put in variables. Numbers. Numbers can be stored inside variables. You can define them as integers, fractions with a diagonal, or with decimals. I'm not pulling your strings when I talk about this next value. Strings are defined by using quotations. They are used for storing letters, words, sentences, etc. It tells the computer that they aren't objects or numbers. You can combine strings by adding two periods in between the strings. Objects. You can store objects in variables by defining their path. For example, a part named Johnny in the workspace can be defined as game.workspace.Johnny. The period marks the path to the object, similar to file systems that use diagonals to distinguish file path from parent to child. In a perfect computer, defining your object location as game.workspace.Johnny would work 100% of the time, but servers don't load everything at the same time, so if you leave it like that, it will most likely fire an error saying that it doesn't exist. We know it exists because we see it right in front of us, but the server will load the scripts first, which could cause some problems with objects not being loaded at the same time. To combat this issue, you should use the function waitForChild after game.workspace so that you are telling the script to wait until it finds the part in game.workspace, in this case, Johnny, and then move on to the next line. If you're waiting for an object inside another, you just add another waitForChild after the first and put the part name inside of it. Now let's go on to global variables. Global variables are variables that are able to be called from any script. Global variables are usually used for universal values like game and workspace. You should try to stay as far away from using global variables in your scripts because they're slower than local variables, and you may end up overriding a variable that already exists. Local variables can be used anywhere in the script except for some exceptions I will talk about in a later video on functions. Print statements can also print variables. This can be useful if you want to know what a variable's value is defined as.